From the studios in beautiful Oceanport, New Jersey, welcome to the biggest and greatest podcast ever. I'm your host, Ray K.
Hello. Hello.
Come on, Cardinal Nation, St. Louis is alive. It's more than just a game for us. It's a way of life. It's all about the memories, baseball's heart and soul. Game on at Busch Stadium, Redbirds, here we go. Yeah, game on at Busch Stadium, Redbirds, here we go.
Hey guys, we got an exciting show today, a very exciting show. You heard that intro music. You know what? I got the person that actually wrote that and sang that song on our podcast today, Valerie Onstott. And Tyler Onstott's going to come on later on. He's making a return appearance, a catching up episode. Tyler's been on a few times. We're going to talk baseball, maybe golf, a little bit about what he's doing now. But Valerie, welcome to the podcast. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Ray. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Valerie, you're from Missouri, right? You're in Missouri now, the Show Me State, I imagine, right?
I am.
Okay.
Yes. Grew up, born and raised in Missouri, right around the St. Louis area. Live down in Springfield now, Springfield, Missouri. So, yeah, Missouri girl.
Okay. I put the pieces together because your song's about the St. Louis Cardinals, so I kind of figured you were from Missouri. But
Right.
But can you tell us, I always wondered about these songs. I mean, this thing is like unbelievably catchy. It's almost like all those baseball songs are like Mickey, Willie and the Duke, or Willie, Mickey and the Duke, that song, Center Field. I mean, these songs are great. Tell us about how you, let's go back and talk about your musical career. You were on the radio and then leading up to how this song came into play. So if you could just talk about a little briefly about how you got started in music.
Yeah, I can briefly. Been in music all my life. Started playing the piano when I was 8 years old. Probably wrote my first song. Tyler and I were talking about this the other day. I had to think. Probably wrote my first song when I was around 15. I know I couldn't drive. So I think it was 15 years old, sat down at the piano and started, having some words and lyrics. And before I knew it, I had some things down. So that actually began. Went on and worked on some shows after high school at Lake of the Ozarks. Then moved on to some other things and always worked a day job. Did some evenings to where I was on a show or in a band or whatever the case may be. And then later on, had a family and I worked down in Branson. And I worked as a backup singer in Branson, but I also worked at a radio station. I had never really worked in radio before, and I went in and read a commercial. It was just one of those things, and it worked out really well to where I started doing an afternoon drive program and worked a morning show on Saturdays, which I'll talk about here in just a little bit. But then some family circumstances, the job changed, so we moved to Springfield. So I had to leave my job in Branson, worked on a local radio station here in Springfield for a while, and decided to go back to school. So, I received my degree because I had always wanted to go back to school at some point, but my children were smaller, and so I received my degree and started teaching at the local colleges. Mm-hmm. But the music never went away. It's always there. So probably a couple of years ago, I just thought, I remember I was sitting in church one day and I said, what, God, if there's anything left for me to write. So I had written a little bit through the years, but I didn't have the time to devote to it. And my attention was elsewhere, was raising my family and still is. But, I was busy doing other things and focusing on things, but it never went away. And I just started writing again and just was inspired by so many things. Mm-hmm. The Cardinal song developed. This was last year. I worked for the Springfield Cardinals, which is the AA minor league team here in Springfield of the St. Louis Cardinals. So I work event staff. I'm an usher and ticket and just have a ball in the summertime with fans and colleagues and the team. It's just a great place to be in the minor league system too, because I love the farm system and watching players develop as they move up to the big league.
Well, I love going to those games. They're so relaxed. You know, the ones I go to here in New Jersey, they're just great. You know, it's just, I don't know. It's just great,
they are.
Smooth,
and
yeah.
You're right there. And those kids and the ball players, they are kids. They walk by me and I think, oh my goodness, you're so young. And how they develop and the commitment that they have. And it's just, I wish everybody could see how these players, they go from being in rookie ball and some of them move up, some of them, have to move on to some other things, unfortunately. But it's just such a wonderful thing to see these kids, how they develop and what they go through before they get their call-ups. And so last year I was getting ready to go into the studio and work on some other songs that I had written. And I have some friends that have been season ticket holders since day one here in Springfield. And they are huge Cardinal fans. And she approached me and she said, have you ever written a song about Cardinals? And I said, well, I've always thought about it, but hadn't really put anything down on paper. And she said, you want to write something about it. And this was last year, maybe even about a year and a half ago. And so, yeah, you know what? And I really I sat down and I started thinking about growing up in around the St. Louis area and how it was such a treat. My dad, who's a huge Cardinal fan, we would listen to the games on radio. Jack Buck and Mike Shannon, that was a thing. And even as I got older and moved to the Lake of the Ozarks, wherever I was at, I would listen to the radio, and because I loved listening to the play-by-play. And
now, what year are you talking when you were following them? Like who were some of the players? Like,
oh my goodness! Well, I remember going in. I remember when I was a sophomore. That would have been '82, of course. Yeah, World Series, and going in to study hall, and most people took their books into study hall. I would run, and that's back when we just had a newspaper. We didn't have computers or anything or technology to give us updates. I'd run and check the scores and everything in '82, leading up, of course, to the World Series. So this was, 70s, 80s, following the Cardinals. So ever since I can remember, because my dad raised me a Cardinal fan and growing up. So it was a treat when we would actually get to drive into the city and go to a baseball game, and still is. And so I started reflecting on that and just reflecting about the culture and not only being a Cardinal fan, but how much it means to St. Louis and the fans. And it's just one of the lyrics in the song is being at the ballpark feels more like coming home. And that's exactly true. And my dad always taught me to not only love the game of baseball, but also what it means to people on and off the field. And the Cardinals are an organization that do so much off the field for the community and give back so much. So it's an atmosphere, it's a dynamic, it's St. Louis, it's everything with that. So I wanted to put my passion for baseball and St. Louis into that song and just capture what I was feeling and hoping people would enjoy that as much as I do.
Well, St. Louis is one of the great, you hear Yankees, you hear Red Sox. I mean, Cardinals are, I don't know if anyone realized it, but they're like number 2, right, on the all-time World Series list. I mean, they were a very huge franchise in baseball, the Cardinals. I mean, they're up there with the Dodgers, the Yankees, all those great teams, right, from way back.
Oh, yeah, and my dad would tell me stories about, because way back, Stan Musial, Red Shandies. My dad would tell me a story. They'd come out to, we lived in Franklin County, which is about an hour outside St. Louis, out in the country. Herman, Missouri. I grew up in New Haven, but Herman, Missouri, and my dad would, those ball players would come out and go out in the country, play golf or whatever, go visiting people. But my dad told me, I don't know how many years ago, he said, I ran into Red Shandies once at the bar and we had a nice conversation. And, that just meant so much to him to be able to talk to, which that would have been so cool to be able to talk to Red Shandies. And he always had stories about the older Cardinal players. I knew, him growing up as a boy, always listening to the radio. So there's a passion there. There's just a connection and a lot of heart.
Well, back then, the players, I think you were able to have lunch with them, and they were more accessible, right, than the ones today.
Right.
I don't know how it is with the Cardinals. Maybe they are more accessible than the other teams, but I mean, you can't get a hold of the Yankees. Really, it's really hard. Back then, you could kind of hang out with some of the players. I've heard,
Right. I really think the Cardinals are accessible. They're always, like I said, doing things for the community and going out. And there's a lot of things too. I go to games in Memphis and watch our AAA club, and a lot of things you don't hear about. You can see Cardinal players out and about. They'll go visit in hospitals. They'll go to St. Jude's when they're down in Memphis. Mm-hmm. But that's not really publicized, which is fine. They do things kind of. It doesn't. They don't need it publicized. They don't necessarily want that focus on, and they're going to help other people. And you find out about it later on, but it's not like they expect a camera to follow them all the time with it. So that's the kind of integrity that, not taking away from other ball clubs by no means, but that's growing up a Cardinal fan. That's what I've seen. So.
Is that all in the song? All these things? Is this all part of this? All this inspiration? All in this song? The hospital visits.
Well, I hope so. I think so. I think a lot of it is that whether you're coming to the ballpark for the first time or for the 100th time, you still, when you walk into Busch Stadium, no matter which Busch Stadium you grew up going into, whether it's this one or the one I grew up in, you still have that feeling when you go in there, that excitement. Wow, I get to be here at the ball game. You and I talked about it, going to minor league games. It's the same thing. You have such a passion for baseball and just being there, and the atmosphere and everything going on is
well, it's the one sport that basketball is pretty good in person. You got to be close, though. I think up on the court. Football, I think, is better on TV. Baseball seems to me it blows it away in person. I mean, you just can't describe it as opposed to TV.
Yeah. And it's I don't know, just the camaraderie maybe of fans and again, it's a connection. It's something it's generational.
Yeah,
it's very special.
Yeah. So Valerie, you write this song. Okay, so now did the lyrics just I always wonder about songwriters. Did the lyrics just come to you and you just do it like a one shot, or is it over the course of of a month and you next week you think of another line, or what's that process?
It's funny.
Yeah.
It's funny because it really depends. With this particular song, and as a songwriter, sometimes I have this happen to where I will get everything but maybe one or two lines. I'll have an idea, but just putting something down that fits or is smooth in transition, whatever the case may be. And the night before I was going to the studio, I was at the ballpark. And my friend and her husband came up to me. She said, "Are you ready? You have your song finished?" I'm like, "Not quite. Got one more line." And I think I actually wrote it. It just came to me right before I went in the studio. So to answer your question, yes and no. I don't. It's one of those things you don't want to have to sit there and struggle and force yourself. Okay, I've got to do this. You just have to let it come and experience
And
think about events and
the music
Okay.
too, Valerie. You also wrote the music to it, or is that the musicians? I guess everyone's
I
part of the
did.
team, or yeah.
I had the melody and everything, and when I go into the studio, I've got a great studio, Studio 2100 here in Springfield, and I'm very blessed to have a producer that we hit it off right off the bat, and he, with all my songs, he'll say, "What you got?" and I'll sing it for him, and he'll grab the guitar, and they'll get the melody and chord progressions and things like that. And I have a lead guitar player that he does a lot with engineering for Miranda Lambert. He's on tour right now as in a band with the opening act for several artists, and it's fun that he lives here in Springfield, and he's in Springfield quite a bit, and he goes in and does the same thing. They'll listen to it and strum along and make a really nice arrangement. But yeah, the words, music, everything is my melody, and I'm blessed that they're really good at picking up on it.
Well, it's very catchy right from the beginning. I'm going to I want my listeners just to hear this beginning here. Hit it.
No more sign of winter, season's in full swing. Watching Cardinal baseball just means the world to me. Hey, hey there, Cardinal Nation, the time has finally come. Yeah, we love the boys of summer, and we got our red on. Come on, Cardinal Nation, St. Louis is alive. It's more than just a game for us, it's a way of life. It's all about the memories of baseball's heart and soul. Game on at the stadium, Redbirds, here we go.
Now, Valerie, the song itself. Now you're done with it. You record it and all that. Like, what do you do now? Okay, it's done. You like it. It's final product. What happens?
Well, it's one of those things that, again, I wrote it last year. And so it's been around for a while. And in April, I was talking to some people about it, talking to radio about it, and they're like, oh, thank you. It's nice. And so it had a little bit of interest, but just kind of sat idle, and it was fun. People would listen to it every now and then. I thought, okay, well, you have to let a song just take on a life of its own. You're the writer, you're the music person, but songs mean different. One song can mean a million different things to a million different people. So you just have to let it go and just take on a life of its own if that's what's meant to be. And I was just going to hold off probably till next season and think, well, I'm not sure which angle to go, but whatever happens will happen with promotions, and try to get a website together and Twitter and things like that. And then they happened to win the National League Central Championship. And so they, in the postseason. And so it piqued a little bit more interest. So very blessed about that. From here, not sure. But again, it's not like, oh gosh, I just ran out and wrote a song because they won a championship. That wasn't the case. But I'm glad that people are able to there's more momentum with October baseball, and they're in the postseason. There's a lot of excitement, and that the song is a little part of that, and people can enjoy it.
Well, we're going to get it out here, and
Thank you.
I mean, I don't even know if I guess every team has their little like music, and it's kind of schmaltzy a lot. I don't know if the Cardinals really have a song, or this is the first song of the Cardinals. We got our red on, by the way, is the name of the song, which is a cool name too. I love when I watch the Cardinals and everyone's in red. I love when teams do that. The Yankees don't. I'm a Yankee guy, and they don't do that. Everyone wears anything, But I love when you see everyone wearing the same thing. There's something powerful about that.
Well, and I went back and forth. What am I gonna call this? I thought we are Cardinal Nation. No, that's not. And it just came to me. Well, wait a minute. Look around you. We got our red on, and I thought, yeah, that'll work. So, I've had it out. It's on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, things like that. So that was kind of fun having something actually out there because being a songwriter and it's really neat now how technology allows us to have escapability and more accessibility for people to hear music and be able to release it and
anyone in the world could hear this.
There's a lot more ways.
Anybody can hear this. You don't got to go through a recording company. Right. This is so cool. You got to put it now. It's going to be on the biggest podcast ever, too. So I'm going to have it on this along with those other things.
Of course, that's great. I know. I'm excited.
Yeah. I'm going to put you on the spot. Can you sing a couple bars of it live? I do this sometimes, Valerie. I mean, you don't have to, but I got to throw it out to you.
Sure.
Okay. Go ahead. Whenever you're ready.
No more sign of winter, season's in full swing. Watching Cardinal baseball just means the world to me. Hey, that Cardinal Nation, the time has finally come. Yeah, we love the boys of summer, and we got all red on.
Holy smokes. It's like Bette Midler or something.
Sorry about that.
Like, man.
It's in the morning. It didn't come out like I wanted there, but.
Oh man, that sounded pretty great on the spur. That's wow. It's amazing the talent out there. You got the whole thing going.
That's very nice.
I want to talk about some of the fun stuff. Then I want to talk to Tyler and catch up with him, and then we'll do our hit and miss. A little after that.
Okay.
You work with some pretty big acts. Tell us about the Oak Ridge Boys. I mean, I've even heard of them. I mean, they're huge. Tell us that story. Yeah.
The Oak Ridge Boys. My goodness, where do I start? When I worked in Branson at the radio station down there. There was a huge venue. It's now gone through some renovations, but back in the mid to late 90s, there was a venue called the Grand Palace, and that's where all the big names came in. And the Oak Ridge Boys, Loretta Lynn, Charlie Pride, Tanya Tucker, Lori Morgan, all my favorites, they came to the Grand Palace. They even had some rock acts come in there. I remember seeing Styx at the Grand Palace. But the Oak Ridge Boys, which they still do, not at that particular venue. They're at the Mansion Theater. But the Oak Ridge Boys would come in either the spring or the fall and do a bunch of dates. And the thing about the Oak Ridge Boys, they've been around a long time. And what iconic entertainers. But they are on the road still a lot. So back then they would come to Branson, play at the Grand Palace, maybe 3, 4 times, 5 times in a month, and have selected dates. So when people were in Branson, they'd get to see the Oak Ridge Boys. And the radio station wanted people, we would go plug the radio station and introduce them. So I said, well, I'll do it. That'd be kind of cool. I was a nervous wreck. I had never gone out there. And the first time I went out there was probably a couple thousand people. Mm-hmm. It was packed. And went out, and I thought, how am I going to do this? And went out there and gave the radio station a shout out, asked if everybody's ready to see the Oak Ridge Boys, and brought them on stage. Mm-hmm. So after I did that for a while, of course you're backstage, you get to know these guys, they see you, and at first it's a little intimidating because here's these iconic people. I remember working at Six Flags when I was a teenager, and the absolute biggest day was Oak Ridge Boys Day. In 1982, Elvira was out. And the park was packed. So here I am standing in front of them, but they are four, and their staff too, four of the nicest guys you could ever meet. And Tyler can tell you, I took him a couple times because he was real small, but Dwayne Allen, I remember Dwayne, they had a ping pong table in the backstage. And, before the show, the guys would just be kind of hanging around. And Dwayne would play ping pong with Tyler a couple of times when I would take him.
Tyler, do you remember that? Do you remember doing that?
Yes. I definitely remember. That was one of the things I remember the most was, is Dwayne going to be there, and is he going to play ping pong with me? And then one thing that I remember that William Lee Golden told me, and, I don't remember, Ray, I don't know how I remembered this, but he looked at me. He asked me how old I was. I said, well, I'm 7. And he told me, and these words will stick with me, he said, enjoy being 7. You'll never be 7 again. He goes, you might be 77, but you'll never be 7. And then he walked away. And I was like, those words have just always stuck with me. And I'm going to be 27 next month. And so I'm like, enjoy being 26 now because I'm going to be 27 next month, and I'm never going to be 26 again.
Wow. So just that one thing, it stays with you. Yeah.
And William Lee Golden, and I just saw him last year. I'm hoping to get to see him here in a couple of weeks when they're back in Princeton. But William Lee, when you see William Lee, if for those unfamiliar, William Lee is the Oak Ridge boy who has a very long mountain man beard, wears the sunglasses, wears the duster, the long coat. And the first time he walked up to me, I saw him coming towards me. And I'm standing there, and he just kind of kept walking real slow towards me. And I thought, oh, no, I did something wrong last time. What did I do? And I'm just kind of shaking. And he come up to me and stopped, and he looked at me, and he goes, well, hi, Val. And I said, hi. And, that was the icebreaker. They're just such good people and just really personable. And, yeah, I was very blessed and honored to. So
they lived up. They lived up to it. They lived up to
that.
You always figure that's how they are, but they really were like that.
Oh, and they love their fans. And you can see Richard Serban. Him and I like to talk baseball. He's huge Nashville Sounds fan, and he goes to a lot of Vanderbilt baseball games. And so him and I will talk baseball a lot. He's the bass singer. He'll do the Papa Mau Mau, him, and loves baseball. So they're I think Joe is a Phillies fan. So they all have their teams. Big sports guys too, so we definitely talk about that, and did talk about that back then too.
Cool. Now you work with another legend pretty intensively, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, and I googled this man and did the Wikipedia thing, and I was quite impressed by his background. Dan Bowman, correct? Am I pronouncing that right?
Don Bowman.
Tell me about that whole scene with Dan.
Don Bowman.
Don Bowman. I'm sorry, Don. Okay.
Don, yes. And he was one of these that when they approached me at the radio station in Branson, they said, we really would like you to do a Saturday morning show. And they said, but we want to team you up. There's a comedian in town. He used to work for Willie Nelson. He was the opening act. He's been a comedic songwriter for years, all this stuff. And I'm like, who? And they said, Don Bowman. And the name did not ring a bell, but the songs did. He wrote Just to Satisfy You with Waylon Jennings, wrote a huge hit for Jim Stafford called Wildwood Weed, so you can guess what that one's about. And, and so we met each other, and I thought just polar opposites at the time. And he was, off the cuff, just said what he was used to saying, whatever he wanted to. And I thought, oh no, and how's this going to work? I remember the first week he called me, our show was on Saturday. He called me on a Wednesday, and all through his life, called me darling ever since we met. And I pick up the phone, and he's like, well, hello there, darling. I said, yes, Mr. Bowman. I said, okay, about the show on Saturday, we probably need to talk about some show prep. And he goes, never heard of it. I'm like, oh no, oh no, I'm doomed. So I got very accustomed to him, but he just has that natural gift of comedy. And yes, just the stories of being on the road with Willie Nelson and Willie, I lost Don back in 2013. And just Willie Nelson, how much he thought of him, and he knew them all, but he never talked about the fame and things like that. He talked about just how much fun it was to do that. Those were his buddies. I mean, Chet Atkins, he had a story about everyone, Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings, and just to sit there and listen and to his stories. And Bill Anderson, songwriter, legendary songwriter, he told me this years ago. He said, I gave Bill Anderson his name, Whispering Bill. I said, oh, yeah, right. And, back then we didn't have really access to look up computers, anything like that. So I kind of carried that with me. Last year, I contacted Bill Anderson because he had just won he was just inducted into the National Songwriters Hall of Fame, and he was in New York, and I just sent him a message on his fan page, and I sent him a picture of Don and I, one of our promo pictures, and told him I used to work with Don. And the first thing he emailed me back, he said, Don gave me my name, Whispering Bill. I'm like, oh, no,
wow.
He was right.
Right.
So Bill Anderson and I have corresponded this past year, and Bill Anderson is a huge Braves fan. So it's been kind of fun, a little baseball rivalry there, too. But that was kind of neat. So, yeah, Don was genuine, and he really helped me. He said, darling, you just got to sometimes just say stuff. Don't be afraid to get out there and get yourself out there. And he, we became very, very good friends. And so when we would go on the studio, when we'd go on the air, he'd say, he goes, we need to treat every show like it's our last one. And there were times I kind of figured it would be. But he was always so genuine and supportive, and he was real. And I think that's what people always loved about him. I know that's what I loved about him. And again, we were good friends off the air too, so that just helped when we'd go on the air together, and it was just like friends talking and cutting up, and that made it real comfortable.
Oh yeah. Did you meet any other famous people? Like, just curious on the musicians back then. You mentioned some big names. You ever meet any of these people at all?
I met Loretta Lynn. Yes,
Oh, okay.
I had the honor, and that was amazing. She was just so nice and sweet. And
what was her biggest hit? She had a giant hit, right? Loretta Lynn. There was one.
Coal Miner's Daughter.
Okay.
Coal Miner's Daughter. She had a lot of them. Has a lot of them.
Right.
And Coal Miner's Daughter. And when I met her, I thought, you know what? I don't have to do anything else in my life anymore. This is it.
So she was that impressive.
This is the
She was that
ultimate.
impressive when you met her.
Oh, just kind. The iconic entertainers. They've had such amazing careers, and the ones I've met have just been so genuine. Trisha Yearwood. I'm a huge Trisha Yearwood fan. I met her long before I was in radio, and she had one hit. She's in Love with the Boy, and of course then went on to have more hits. She married Garth Brooks, but she back then and even now, just a very, very nice person.
Wow.
And
Nice. Kyler, are you still there?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm here, right?
Okay. I don't mean your mom to take up all your time, but this is just fascinating. I could probably keep going here.
Absolutely. She could talk for hours, and it's really amazing, kind of watching it all unfold and just kind of seeing even me. Now I grew up in more of a sports environment, but being able to be around the Oak Ridge boys, and at that time I didn't really realize how big they were until later in life, and looking back on it, it's amazing to think that I played ping pong with one of the people, the Oak Ridge boys. So
Right, right. What a great thing for a kid, to grow up and then have this stuff around you.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna talk to you a little bit, and Valerie, can you hang on? Because I want to do that hit and miss in a little while, and then I got a few other questions. So while I have Tyler on the phone here, I want to talk about what he's been up to, because we had a couple great podcasts, and I know you got a job with a nice professional sports team, and you're really starting to kick it in now. Tell us a little bit about what's going on now, and then I want to talk a little bit about baseball, about what you think about the upcoming playoff scene.
Absolutely. Well, yes, definitely a change from our first podcast. I know I was on there saying I would like to maybe get back into professional sports on a part-time basis. And at that time, I was pretty content with doing what I was doing here in St. Louis and just kind of enjoying as a fan. But I really, over the last couple months, have missed going to the ballpark or going to a sports arena and being on staff, even in a part-time role. So I was able to pick up a role, and I'm actually working a game tonight. And so looking forward to that. And so really enjoying my time here and hearing about the Cardinals. And I live within walking distance of the ballpark, so it's really cool to kind of have these experiences right now and being able to continue doing what I'm doing. And then the big thing I picked up since we last talked was golf. I've never golfed really before in my life, and I think for the last 5 weekends I've been out on the golf course. So I've really picked up that hobby and really enjoy golfing and it's just such a relaxing game.
Now, do you have that natural swing? I know you played baseball. Is that all part of, picking up golf? Because some people seem to get it, other people don't. I mean, is there? I know you got to practice.
Messed my golf swing up.
Oh, the baseball swing messed the golf swing up. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
That's not taken away from my playing experience, but I've kind of, and I used to go out on the golf course and watch my grandparents golf. I probably golfed a couple of holes, but I'd never done a full round of 18 before. And so I went with some work buddies. It was about a month and a half ago. And so they were kind of telling me giving me some tips and stuff. Well, yesterday I was golfing out in Illinois and I came across, and this just kind of goes back to what we talked about in the first podcast. You never really know who you're going to run into. So there was a guy out there and he was just golfing and ended up just got talking to him, and turns out he worked out there, and I saw him at the end there. I just come off the course, and I was like, I'm going to ask this guy if I'm holding the club right, because I didn't have my best game yesterday. And turns out he used to coach against my former college coach. He's a high school basketball coach, and when my college coach was in high school, his teams went against each other. And so he was showing me some things, and it was just funny how, we had that mutual connection, and we had no idea until I went up and talked to him. So he showed me some things and gave me some drills to do while I'm here at home. And so
okay, so you're into it. You're into it. You're practicing at home. You're practicing grips at home. I mean, that's impressive,
Yeah, I like to imitate my swing at home. I haven't gotten to the point where I'm hitting golf balls off my balcony yet, but we might get there. I don't know.
Now, what you said, I think, is important, Tyler, too, because golf, you always hear all these great connections on the golf course. I mean, you just made one just, almost by accident. Isn't that a great benefit of golf? Not only the fun of it, which everyone that plays it seems to really love it, by the way. I don't know what it is. I don't play it a lot, but everyone just is like they can't wait to golf, and it's just like this great love for it. Is you meet great connections. There's business deals on the thing. I know the better you are, I find the better your connections probably are, because everyone likes to be around the good players. I would imagine. Do you find that enticing? I mean, is that part of the thing? Because you never know who you're going to run into on the golf course.
And it's funny you mentioned that, Ray, because I had a similar instance my second time golfing, where I was out there golfing and I was paired up with a group, and there was a kid, he looked to be about my age, had his name on his golf bag. The name did not ring a bell. And we were just talking, and he goes, yeah, my dad's a huge Cubs fan. And, I was talking about my time with the Cubs, and we just got to know each other. Well, then he left after, he was like, I've got to go out of town tomorrow. So he left after like hole 16, but he said, hey, I sing in Nashville. So if you're ever down there, he gave me his email, was like, let me know. And so I texted my mom and said, because Mom likes to go to Nashville, and said, look out for this particular individual's name. And Mom calls me and goes, you know who that is, right? And I said, no, I have no idea. And it turns out it was a very famous band. It was their lead singer's son. and they were performing in St. Louis that night. And so, but I had no idea until after he had left it was who it was. So it was definitely a great experience. And like you said, you just never know. And that's just life in general. You just never know who
True.
knows who and
Right.
who you're going to be connected to. And that's why, and I've got to watch it sometimes too. What's in my brain comes out of my mouth. Sometimes you've got to watch that because you just never know who's around.
Okay. Yeah. I always hear, especially around your kids, when you have kids, they're always watching you, so you got to, be mindful of that kind of stuff, even on that
Absolutely.
level, Now we haven't met yet. You're going to be in New York, I think, coming up, next month. Tell us about New York. We were talking how you have this love for New York City. Can you explain that, please?
Yes. So we went, and Mom can attest to this too. We went as a family vacation. Every year we would go as a family somewhere. One year, I think I talked about in the last podcast, going to Colorado. I'd go to Coors Field. That was the first time we'd gone to Colorado. And so we thought for this one, this was August of 2006. And we thought, let's try something. Let's go out east. So we ended up going to New York. We flew into New York on a Friday, and then we were only there till like a Sunday. But we did so much in that 2 days. And I've always, as I've told you before, I've always been a big city person. But I just fell in love with New York. And so we ended up going to Boston, the Berkshire Mountains, kind of exploring that northeast region. I think it's Bennington, Vermont was another city we had visited. So I just really fell in love with the Northeast. And so ended up not going back to New York until one day I was going to D.C. I was working basketball camps out at George Mason. And I told my mom, I said, I think I'm going to go to New York City for a day, take the train up. It was like $36 one way. I said, I want to see if I still have this love for New York. And so ended up taking the train up and taking it back and just did a lot of walking around. And so over the last 3 years, I believe I've been to New York. I think this will be my fourth time in 2 years. So this will be my sixth time going there overall. And I just love, there's just something about New York. As I've told you before, I lived in Chicago for 3 years, and it's a city, don't get me wrong, but it's not that hustle and bustle and that, it is, but there's just something different about New York. And I don't know what it is, but some kind of
energy, some kind of extra powerful energy of some kind, or is it, can you even put it in words what it is about it? I hear other people say that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say it's a different energy for sure. I would say the food options, of course, Chicago, you've got your pizza places. And it's funny, I was actually looking last night at, I've never had New York style pizza before. I had a slice of pizza at Madison Square Garden, but that doesn't really count in my opinion. So last night I was looking, I'm like, what pizza place am I going to go to while I'm up there in a couple weeks? Because that's, I want to try that. And so there's a lot of food options. And I think just the different neighborhoods too, every borough has different neighborhoods that are just geared towards something. There's history and, there's so many museums and this will be my sixth time there. And there's still things I haven't done that I plan on doing that, I'm going to do. And if I don't do it this trip, I'll do it next trip when I'm up there for one of our events next year. So it's just a great city overall.
It's there's something magical about it, and you've been to Chicago, St. Louis. It's quite a thing, to hear someone from the Midwest say they love New York so much. So it's I like hearing it. We go there a lot. You get used to it. When I hear that, it's like you're right. There is something about New York City.
Absolutely.
With the Frank Sinatra song, whatever. I guess it's yeah.
Frank Sinatra also wrote a similar song about Chicago. So. I had never heard that song till I moved to Chicago. So I think Frank Sinatra and I kind of have the same mindset of cities are, after living in Chicago, could I live in Manhattan? I probably could. I would try to talk myself out of it, but I would like to be close enough where I could maybe take the train in for a day and be able to go into the city.
Right, right.
I think it's a cool city to visit, and it's, coming from the Midwest, living there, but I could definitely live in the suburbs and commute in. There's just so much to do, and there's not enough time to do it all, no matter how many times you go.
Good point. Valerie, are you ready for that hit and miss now? My word association?
Well, let's give it a try.
All right. Okay. Hey, you're going to do great on this thing. Here we go. What is your favorite color?
Red.
Okay. Now, if you were in a foxhole, there's that question that I kind of gave it away a little earlier with Tyler. but it's anyone other than family, who would be in the foxhole with you?
How much time do I get?
Hey, take as much as you want. Yeah.
If I had to be in a foxhole,
We could always come back to
I
it.
wouldn't know.
We could come back to it if you want.
Yeah, let's come back to it.
Okay.
Let's come back to
Okay.
it.
Now,
Because I know what Tyler's answer it would probably be, and I'm not going to copycat off that. But I would want someone who would just, oh my goodness. There's a lot.
We'll get back to it.
I probably need more than one person to get me out of it.
Hey, no one gave me two people yet. I guess you can have two, but let me ask you a few more. If something pops in your mind, we'll, just blurt it out. That's fine. The desert island question. If you were on a deserted island for 5 years, perfect weather, what 2 musical CDs would you bring with you?
I would bring Fleetwood Mac, and of course the Oak Ridge Boys.
Okay, right. Well, that might have been too easy. Other than the Oak Ridge Boys, who would the third one be?
Love 38 Special.
Okay. What's your
38 Special kind of, yeah.
Okay. I was going to ask, what's your favorite Fleetwood Mac song?
Oh, I've got a bunch of them.
Give me 2 or 3.
Oh my goodness! Go Your Own Way. Go Your Own Way.
Okay.
The Chain, Rhiannon.
That was probably one of the greatest albums of all time. That Rumors album, wasn't it? In like 70,
Rumors,
whatever that was,
yes.
77 or whatever. That was like the album of that summer. Because I'm around the same age as you, so I lived through all that stuff.
Yep.
Your favorite movie?
Pretty Woman.
Ah, okay. I like that one. And
it was probably the last movie I've ever seen. Seriously, I haven't been in a movie theater since 1990. So I don't get out much. And so, but yeah, with Julia Roberts and Richard Gere.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Yeah.
Cute.
Yeah. That was quite a
And the
cute premise.
soundtrack was good too.
Yeah. Who's your favorite actor or actress?
Oh my goodness. Well, I would say, even though I don't see a lot of movies, I'm Clint Eastwood. Love Clint Eastwood. As far as actress goes, oh my goodness.
Well, I said actor or actress. Unless someone pops in.
Okay, actor would be Clint Eastwood.
Clint Eastwood. Okay.
Yeah.
What is your favorite? What's the greatest rock song of all time?
Oh boy, that's hard because there's so many.
I told you this is not easy. This part of my podcast.
This is not easy. Greatest rock song of all time. Oh man, you're making me narrow it down to just one.
You could name 2. I mean, it's not dead set on one.
Oh gosh.
Not country song, rock song.
Well, I love AC/DC, Shook Me All Night Long. That's good. But, I mean, rock song, I even go back to, of course, I'm a huge Elvis fan. So
that was my next question. Was going to be, what do you think of Elvis? But tell me your favorite rock song with Elvis.
Elvis, oh gosh. All of them from Elvis. I mean, Blue Suede Shoes and That's All Right, Mama. I mean, It's just, and by today's standards, I mean, that's still rock and roll. I love Jerry Lee Lewis. Great Balls of Fire.
I was at his, would you believe this one? And I got a photo to prove it. I was at Jerry Lee Lewis's 60th birthday party in Mississippi, and I arm wrestled him righty and lefty.
Oh.
How about that?
Oh, I love Jerry Lee. He has a club. I have some friends that play at Jerry Lee's club. In fact, Jerry Lee was just there for his recent birthday. And I have some friends that play down at Jerry Lee Lewis's cafe down on Beale. It's just a fun place to go. And yeah, he's still Jerry Lee,
He is. He's unique.
He's still Jerry Lee. He's tough. He's tough.
He is. I was in his living room because my friend's sort of like a groupie guy a little bit. So he got into, he knew his wife back then, and he got into the whole thing. And then we were invited to the party at his house, and we were there early, and we were in his living room with like 3 other guys, and me and my friend Nick and Jerry Lee for like about 40 minutes, and he was just talking about all types of stuff, and he zeroed in on me and was asking me all these crazy questions. I said, I don't know what this guy's on, but I mean, I never met anybody like this in my life, And then he wanted to arm wrestle me. So.
Jerry Lee is rock and roll.
He lives it, yeah.
Through and through.
Yeah.
He lives it, and that's absolutely.
Now, what is it about Elvis that you liked? I mean, my favorite song was "Don't Be Cruel." I thought that was a great song. What is it about Elvis? I mean, there is something special that seems to put him way above a lot of other singers. There's some I can't even describe what it is. The charisma, I guess everything.
Well,
what's it to you?
Originality.
Okay.
And I worked for an Elvis impersonator back when I was in my early 20s, and so I knew all the songs, got to rehearse all the songs, but Elvis was, he broke barriers. He broke musical barriers with growing up in Memphis and Memphis being the blues and things like that. He was able to have his own style that appealed to so many demographics of people and culture, and and the visuals with his characteristics and how he had so much different to offer. I mean, there was Jerry Lee, there was Elvis and Carl Perkins and, Million Dollar Quartet, those guys, but they all brought in something to that sound and contributed it so differently that it changed the history of music. It really did. So that's what I love about it. And because you have the Nashville sound, then you have the Memphis sound and the deep Delta and where all that music came from. And that's what I enjoy about going down on Beale Street too, is just the rich history of Muddy Waters and Robert Johnson, all them. Yeah.
Have you been to Graceland?
I have several times. My middle son is very much an Elvis fan, and we always we'll take an evening or something and drive down to Memphis. It's about 5 hours from here, and stay down there. And the next day, he's like, "Well, Mom, I know we went to Graceland last time, but can we go back?" So we'll go there. But yeah, it's fun. Memphis has a lot of history too.
My friend tried to sneak upstairs. He was joking, but he went like 4 steps up because they rope it off that you can't go up into the bedroom. And he went up like about 4 steps, and he was there for about a minute. He goes, no one's coming after me. And then the security guy finally came over, or someone came over and said, you can't go up there, But one thing about...
you heard the story of was it... how many years ago, which it's happened, but some dude jumped the fence and started running in the yard. Well, that dude just happened to be a very young Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. He was actually just
one
on the
of your
verge
Jersey guys.
Yeah, Bruce, that's right. He was a huge Elvis fan. Yeah, that kind of got him in. You don't realize all the influences that Elvis, and then when the Beatles came, and then all the people that came into music because of them. And there wasn't no Elvis, there'd be no Beatles, So that's how huge that was, And,
And Elvis was so much ahead of his time with sound and with what he was wanting to do with his music. And he had so much respect from, all my readings and research and from people that talk about him and have been around him. He had so much respect for other musicians and their style. And he paid attention. And it wasn't I got to be better than that or better than that. No, he really embraced other musicians and other styles and always was learning from them. So. And
no one ever looked like Elvis. There's only one. Some people look like that guy, but no, you can't say, oh yeah, he looks like Elvis. He just had that unique. Even in '56, he looked like it was 1987. He looked modern. They had those crew cut. Elvis just looked modern in '56. He had that.
Mm-hmm.
That whole thing going.
He always had a flair for style, and if you go down on Beale, and that's where Elvis used to shop at, it's the Lansky family. They're the ones that were actually originally responsible for kind of helping Elvis pick out his clothes, and he'd had his own style, but that's where he went, was Lansky's. So that's kind of neat with the history of Memphis, and that's where. I remember when I was down there a couple times ago, I went in Lansky's. I always just like to look around, and was it John Oates was doing a show? He was coming from Nashville, had a show in Memphis, so there was a 3 hours difference there. The bus got to Memphis, and somehow, some way, John Oates left some of his wardrobe at home, and he buzzed into Lansky's, and they got him all fixed up right before the show, before he could go out and.
Okay.
And, got him some new threads, because I guess he either forgot them or got behind and wasn't able, so he popped in Lansky's. So you just never know now who shops at Lansky's either. So
it's great history stuff,
Yeah.
Who's your favorite baseball player, or a couple baseball players?
Back in '82, and still is probably, second baseman Tommy Herr. Was always my favorite. All the Cardinals, really, now. It's hard to narrow down just one. Yadier Molina, of course, because of the they all show so much class and leadership. And I think Yadi, being a veteran player, Wayno, all them guys have been in the organization and the club, and they really are showing these younger guys to how to carry yourself, and their manager does the same thing, just leads by example. And I think it's so commendable.
Who do you think was a better pitcher, Bob Gibson or Tom Seaver?
I'd have to say Gibby.
Okay.
Now you see, you're making me choose, but I always lean towards Gibby.
Should I not let you choose then? I guess I went away from my thing. Usually
my heart's too much there, so I don't want to have to choose.
I hear you. Now, Valerie, this is my last. Well, let me ask you this: what was the best advice you ever received? Then I'll ask my last question. Best advice that you ever received?
Best advice I ever received was when I would say something, they would say, my dad always taught me, just be you, be who you are, and let everything else take care of itself. Don't be afraid to get out of your comfort zone, and just believe in who you are. So in fact, on my Twitter, it's my publishing, all my music is published. It's BU Music, BE capital U Music.
Okay.
Just to kind of embrace that, you just have to do what you do, and don't try to avoid comparing yourself. You always want to work on your craft and to improve and get better and things like that, but you still have to believe in what you do. And it takes years and years. At my age, it's like, oh gosh, maybe I need to get out of my comfort zone and do some things. So yeah, it's been a work in progress for sure.
I had a comedian on, and that's his advice. It's great timeless advice, is just be yourself up on the stage. And he says it took him about 10 years to figure out who himself was.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, because you spend so much time thinking about, I know I did. I would be on stage and I'd look out and there'd be people in the audience, and you focus more on, gosh, do they like me or don't they like me? What did I do? You are always second guessing yourself. And I think, and again, you learn that from experience. That's wasting a lot of time to where you could just be developing and figuring things out for yourself. And, in the whole scheme of things, you just be kind to people, and everything else will work out.
I love that. Yes. Actually, I got one more before my last one, Valerie, and I'm gonna get an answer out of you, because I'm gonna see if you can answer this in I'm gonna get a 5-second timer limit on this thing, and I'm gonna say it slow. If you were in the foxhole, for other than family members, you're in this foxhole, and bad stuff's going on out there, and you want someone in there with you, who would you pick?
I would pick probably one of the smartest ladies in the music business, and that would be Dolly Parton.
Oh, all right. I love that. Yeah, yeah.
Because Dolly could she'd figure out a way to get out, because Dolly is very, very, very smart. And, she'd get it figured out, or she'd just talk her way out of it,
I like that. Well, I have to ask you this. Have you ever met her?
I have not.
Okay.
No, I have not.
Okay.
But I have a lot of connections to East Tennessee, where Dolly's at. And so when you hear the people around Sevierville talk about her, it's just, she's very genuine, very down to earth, but I have not yet met her personally, but that would be something.
It was Steel Magnolias, right? That was she, I think she stole that movie. There was great actresses in that thing.
Oh.
Yeah.
She's a natural, just a natural at everything. And one of her best quotes, you have to read, she's got a whole book of quotes, and it's just natural stuff that she has said. But one thing she says is, because obviously people have talked about her in some positive and some maybe not so positive sometimes, but she said, you know what? Who cares what people are saying about you as long as they're talking about you?
Oh, right.
So,
right. Yeah.
And she'd be the first. You read things about her. She's always the first one to laugh at herself and doesn't take herself too seriously. And just her objective is to be a songwriter, and she's very much done that. A very gifted songwriter and savvy business person. So that's why I'd be in a foxhole with her, because she'd get me out.
Yeah, and you know what? She seems very fun and lively, so during the quiet time, she kind of, be fun to be around too,
Oh, absolutely.
Right. All right, my last question on my hit and miss. You ready for this one, Valerie? My last one.
I'll try.
Almost done. Okay. Here it is. Okay. If you have one wish in the world tomorrow, and I'm the genie, I'm going to grant this one wish for you, whatever you want, that's going to come true tomorrow, what would that wish be? That's a good question, right?
That's a very good question. My wish would be to have the world focus more on being a positive, embrace people more. It's not about me. My wish would be to be a role model. Mm-hmm. And set an example to try to be better to people every day, and do that. Nothing, I don't need anything as far as tangible things. I just want to see the world embrace more positive things and kind of be able to take every day as a good thing, because every day is a blessing, and try to work on all that.
Wow. Can you imagine if 7 billion people did what you just said? How great the world would be? Holy smokes.
Well, and it's not about me. It's just everyday stuff. Just holding the door open for maybe a little elderly person that can't get through it. I mean, that means a lot to somebody, or shaking a veteran's hand. Mm-hmm. They don't, my boys, I'm so proud of them. And we do too, walk up to a veteran and say, thank you for your service. And a lot of them are just like, oh, well, thank you, because they don't get that as much as, they always deserve that. So it's things like that may seem, that takes maybe 10, 20 seconds, but it can change somebody else's life and purpose. And I think just always having a purpose. Well,
that's great. Well, I know it's rubbed off on Tyler. He's one of my favorite people, and he accomplishes what you're all saying there. Yeah.
So proud of my boys and Tyler and everybody that's, life can be challenging sometimes, can't it?
Yeah. Well, you're cheering it up with a lot of what you're saying, and your great song. And Tyler, you got a heck of a mom. I mean, this was great. Just
Well, thank you.
Really, thank you for coming on here. Anything you want to add, like Valerie, where we could hear the song? I know it's on YouTube. It's on the Spotify. You just put on what we got our red on, and then it comes up somewhere, or.
Yeah, it's actually under Valerie, just my first name, Valerie. We got our red on. You can go to iTunes, Apple, Spotify. It's on Amazon. And also, I think you may have had the link on there. You can hear it through SoundCloud. and just hear it through there. But there's a link there. I have it. It's my musical distribution is cdbaby.com. And, you know, if you're not on iTunes or anything like that, you can just download it from cdbaby.com. But I know a lot of people, my boys are trying to kind of educate me on all these different outlets like iTunes and Spotify and all those. So it's out there, but it's Valerie, first name, we got our red on, and they should be able to find it.
Okay.
But yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Valerie. Thank you, Tyler, for coming on. This was great, and we're gonna make it easy for everyone to hear this song because we're gonna play it right now. Hit it. We got our red on. Valerie Onstott.
No more sign of winter, season's in full swing. Watching Cardinal baseball just means the world to me. Hey, hey there, Cardinal Nation, the time has finally come. Yeah, we love the boys of summer.